Hello and welcome to the third webinar in our 2024 series. If you've been on previous webinars, welcome again. If this is your first one, it's good to see you. We're running these webinars sort of every month over the rest of the year, so please keep an eye on our website and please do let us know if there's any specific topics that you would like us to cover. Today, I am joined by Jill, who works for Caring Together, and Jason, the husband of a stroke survivor, who was literally left holding the baby when his wife had a stroke 5 months after giving birth. Caring Together, I'm sure Jill will tell you more about this, but Caring Together are a charity located in the southeast of England and help carers get the support and advice that they need to help them before, during, after their caring role. They're also a network partner of the Carers Trust, who cover the rest of the country. So although Jill is down in the southeast of England, she will explain to you how to get help wherever you live. So some housekeeping before we begin. This session is being recorded, but no details of anyone watching will be captured. Only the people that are presenting on this webinar, so that's Jill, myself and Jason, will appear. There is also a chat function, so please say hello to anybody and post any general comments. If you've got any questions that you want to ask Jill or Jason or myself, use the Q&A function, and if you pop the questions in there, if we get time at the end, we'll try and answer as many as we can. So now I'd like to introduce you to Jill.
Thank you. I've just got some slides to share with you, so I've got a presentation to go through, so bear with me while I just share those. Okay, hopefully you can see the slides on the screen. So my name is Jill Noy, and I am here today to give you a bit of an awareness session about carers and talk to anybody who's supporting somebody who has suffered a stroke. So as I said, my name is Jill Noy. I'm the Awareness and Voice Delivery Lead at Caring Together. Caring Together, as Sheila briefly mentioned, we are a charity that support unpaid carers, and we work across Cambridgeshire, Peterborough and Norfolk. But as Sheila said, we are a partner of the National Carers Trust, and I'll explain about how you can reach support in your local area a bit further on. But it's important for us that carers aren't in crisis, isolated or struggling alone. We want to make sure that people know who carers are before they find themselves in a caring role, get that support they need during their caring role, and that support after as well. And all of those things are equally as important. So I'm going to take it right back to basics. Who is a carer? So this is the NHS definition of a carer. So a carer is anyone, including children and adults, who look after a family member, a partner or friend who needs their help because of their illness, frailty, disability, a mental health problem or an addiction, and cannot cope without their support. That's the key bit there, cannot cope without their support. So if that person wasn't getting somebody up in the morning, supporting them with their eating, dressing, washing, and also providing emotional support as well, which is just as vital, but people often don't see that. But it's really important. So if they weren't able to sort of cope without any of that support, there is clearly a caring role. And the care they provide is unpaid. When we use the word carer, people think of paid care workers, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about unpaid carers. I just want to give you the definition as well of young carers. So we work with young people from the age of 5 up to adults, 105 and over. So young carers are children and young people under the age of 18. And young adult carers are young people aged between 16 and 25. The reason that's different between young carers and young adult carers is because services can look a bit different depending on their age and what's appropriate. And I just want to mention parent carers as well. This is the definition. So a parent carer is somebody over the age of 18 who's looking after a child or young person who needs help because of their illness, disability, or an additional need for whom they have parental responsibility. Quite often parents won't see themselves as a parent carer. They'll say, that's my job as a mum, dad, but actually if they have any of those extra needs, then they are a parent carer as well. So what can caring look like? So these are just some examples. So it can be collecting shopping, prescriptions, supporting somebody to leave their home, phoning, visiting, providing emotional support, just as I mentioned before, that's really, really important. Preparing meals, cleaning, supporting with personal care. If you have to think of somebody else when planning your day, when going to work or whatever you're doing that day, if you have to think of somebody else's needs when planning your own day, that is an indication of a caring role. And could that person cope without your support, just as I mentioned? If you weren't doing those things, would they manage on their own? And that can be a really good question if you notice that somebody is caring, maybe a friend or relative. That's quite a nice, gentle conversation to have. You know, what would they do if you weren't there to do that? I've now got a video to share with you. This shows you the kind of the two sides to caring and what might be going on for some carers beneath the surface that they don't always talk about. Just a bit of a trigger warning as well. This video is emotional. I've watched it countless times and it gets me every time. So bear with me while I stop sharing and reshare.
Yeah, I'm going to show you how it works, if that's okay.
Sure.
Yeah. Sure. So you're going to see me on the screen here, and you're going to see my face, and you're just basically talking to me.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
You might just have to keep an eye on because.
Okay, so that's how it all works.
Oh,
Look, I was going to say, I can imagine.
I was expecting this to be a mirror to myself. I would describe myself as bubbly.
She's really caring and she's really chatty.
I love dancing. Dancing's my thing.
She's fun.
She's just so well put together.
I try to always put on a sunny face, I guess.
Would you like an impression?
Hello, how is everyone?
He's very sweet, very, very sweet and very caring, very kind.
Anxious.
She's a very vivacious character.
There are dark days,
Most of the time she's happy.
Sometimes I feel extremely low.
Joyous.
Heavy. Yeah.
very thoughtful, very caring person. He's really lovely.
That honestly, I'm kind of sick of it all. And it's hard for me to say, but there becomes a point where you just stop kind of caring as much.
Yeah, I think she's pretty open.
I still don't open up about my relationship. I don't open up about my mental health. I don't open up really about anything.
Does it ever feel that talking to someone might help?
Sometimes I feel like it might, but I struggle to open up to people. I've just built this brigade of walls that I don't know how I'd feel about actually opening up to someone in depth. I don't want to burden them when I don't have to.
I've spent how many years as a kid, and I felt like they've been taken away. And now, even when I'm 20 and I'm just making my way into adulthood, I feel like it's still affecting me quite a lot.
Thinking, oh, no one understands me, feeling very alone. Feeling very, just on my own.
I love you so much.
Very much.
Like, I'm such a bad friend.
No, you're not. You're
I just
not.
felt like if you wanted to talk to me about it, you would.
No. It's a hard topic.
I know. Did you see my impression of you?
Hello.
Yeah, that video gets me every time. It is very emotional, and these are the things that carers might have going on beneath the surface. So some carers have described themselves feeling like a swan, that they're having to glide through life, but frantically underneath they're swimming away. And I think sometimes they can be maybe feel a bit around a sort of guilt or shame around feeling like they're not coping with that caring role. So how many carers are there in the UK? So according to the most recent census, there's 5 million carers in the UK, and I don't think that's a true reflection at all. The census was taken during lockdown, where people weren't able to move from home to home. So I think that has had a drastic impact on the numbers of carers recorded. You're also reliant on carers recognising that they're a carer and ticking that box to say they're a carer. We know there are many carers that wouldn't see themselves as a carer or wouldn't tick that box to say they are a carer. And that can be one of the biggest barriers when accessing support. Again, talking about identification, how long does it take for a carer to identify themselves? So 51% took over a year to sort of recognise that they were a carer, and 36% took over 3 years to recognise they had a caring role, which is such a long time. What we're seeing is that carers are coming to us or identifying their caring role when they're at crisis. We want to make sure that everybody knows who a carer is and how they can be supported. So should they find themselves in a caring role, like it can happen overnight, it can happen gradually. We want people to be armed with that information and be able to spot that they're a carer really early on. And that can prevent them from heading to crisis. So what are the impacts on being an adult carer? So these are 3 things that I thought were really important to mention. So the proportion of carers providing significant care, so that's over 20 hours per week, has increased by 42% since October 2020. And I think lockdown has had a play in that. But equally, this just shows that carers are under more pressure, and that is what we're seeing on our helpline. Also, on top of that, 46% of carers told us they had not had an assessment for their needs as an unpaid carer. I'll go on to talk about carer assessments, but it is something that carers are legally entitled to, and it can highlight some of that support. But if we've got carers doing more and under more pressure, and just under half of carers not having that assessment for their needs as a carer, you can see how that's kind of a bit of a storm brewing for crisis. We know that carers often put their own health on the back burner. So 60% of carers report to have a long-term health condition or disability. They often don't put their own health as a priority. I've got one example that I can share with you. There was a gentleman who cared for his wife, and he'd just been diagnosed with cancer, and he wasn't going to go to his first cancer treatment. He didn't have anyone to care for his wife. Luckily, this was picked up and we were able to offer some support. Luckily, this nurse had picked this up and contacted us. But that just shows how carers are quite often on that hamster wheel, thinking about today and how they're going to get through today and not prioritising their own health. So the carers assessment that I mentioned, so this is an entitlement for all carers. This can be done by the local authority, and it's to make sure that carers have the support they need as a carer. So this could highlight any support services, any care that's needed, and this can be reviewed as things change. So we're now going to talk about young carers. So as I mentioned, we work with young carers from the age of 5, and this is another video that I've got to share with you. You may have even seen this. This was an ITV documentary, well, a snippet from that documentary. It was Ross Kemp went to visit lots of different people up and down Britain, and young carers were one of those. And again, it is emotional, and bear with me while I stop sharing and reshare.
So far, I've met young carers in their teens struggling with their mental health and their education. Now, I'm going to find out just how young some of Britain's carers are.
Just down the road.
I'm back in Blackburn with Huma Sheikh, who works for the charity Child Action Northwest. Every week, she picks up young carers so they can spend some crucial respite time away from their homes.
So the aim is to offer the young person respite from their caring role.
So I give them a break?
Yeah. So it's to give them a break so that they can be children again, really. Meet other young carers who are in a similar situation to themselves.
The last census in 2011 showed the number of young carers had gone up by 19% on the previous decade. Charities estimate that today there could be as many as 800,000 young carers.
Are we in?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
Our first stop was to pick up 9-year-old Kenzie, who helps out his mum, who has fibromyalgia.
Good to meet you, I'm Ross. Nice to meet you, mate.
Next on our journey, we pick up 6-year-old Alexis.
Hello, how are you?
She supports her mum and younger brother.
Hi, you guys. Here we are.
So this is Ali, Ross.
Yeah. Hi, Ali. How are you?
Ali, this is Ross.
How old are you, Ali? 5. So you're 5 years old? Wow.
We arrive at the charity's office as the group session is in full swing.
And we'll do one more, maybe a little bit of a happier thing, because it's really important to recognise when we're feeling really happy.
Ali is the youngest in the infant carers group. He's able to access the same local authority-funded services as Lizzie. The children can make friends with carers their own age, and the charity also teaches them useful skills like first aid and food hygiene.
Do you think I could come to your house and see you look after your sister?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Can I have a handshake?
Got your bag?
Hello. Hi, I'm Ross.
Nice to meet you.
How are you?
Very good. Who's this, Ali?
It's your sister. Hello.
Ali's sister Zainab requires round-the-clock care. Their dad works nights and shares the caring with his wife, Hanifa. Zainab has severe cerebral palsy, epilepsy, and she's visually impaired.
How many puffs have you given her?
4.
The medicine she receives is vital to keep her alive.
Give it a good one. Cover it. Good boy.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
That done?
Yeah.
Put the lid back on. Thank you. And can you get all Zainab's medicines, please?
And that really just takes 24/7 care.
24/7 is like an understatement. I'm round the clock. I have to watch her like a hawk.
Ali helps his mum tidying up, putting away the shopping, and more importantly, he watches over his sister.
Thank you, Ali.
Just the week before, he woke up his mum in the middle of the night to alert her to Zainab's coughing.
If she's behaving different, he knows how to react. He's witnessed paramedics being rushed in at the middle of the night, 12 o'clock.
Do you keep an eye on your sister, Ali?
Yeah.
What do you look out for?
I love her.
Because you love her. Yeah, you look out for her because you love her.
Yeah.
Where would you be if Ali wasn't the child that he is?
I wouldn't be able to survive. That is the truth. Because he's my support. Ali, are we ready to go upstairs? We got everything?
What I've realised so far is there's just such a wide need in so many families for extra help, and that help is coming from young people, from young carers, and their ages can differ remarkably. I mean, Ali's 5 years old, and whether it's been by a 15-year-old girl looking after a brother and a mum, or whether it's Ali looking after his sister, the motivation is love.
Amazing Ali and all that he does for his family. I have a 7-year-old who can't manage to put his dirty washing in the washing bin. So, you know, amazing all the things that Ali does to support his family. So what are the impacts on being a young carer? These are some of the things that young carers have told us that they'd experienced, quite similar to adult carers. So poor opportunities to socialise, maybe not being able to go to football practice at the weekend or that birthday party. Bullying at school, there's a real lack of understanding around young carers. Poor attendance, you could see that family, for example, might struggle to get Ali to school the next day if they've been at the hospital in the middle of the night. Poor health, again, putting their own health on the back burner. Anger and high levels of stress. Why can't I go to that birthday party? all of those sort of emotions, low energy levels, again, it's going to affect their sleep in some cases, isolation, and there being a stigma around being a young carer. And this doesn't mean to say that everybody faces these, but these are the things that young carers had told us they'd experienced. Now, it all looks really doom and gloom, doesn't it? But there was a study that took place to show that there were some benefits to being a young carer, and that actually young carers, well, all carers are extremely resilient, but especially for young carers, they've learnt some skills in childhood that they can then take on to adulthood that will set them apart from their peers. For example, some young carers are responsible for the household finances, and they're going to go into adulthood with money management skills, and they're the things that we need to be celebrating and championing for young carers. So according to the most recent census, the average age of a young carer, so bearing in mind we're supporting young carers from the age of 5 to 18, the average age of a young carer is between 7 and 8. And as we saw, Ali was 5 in that video. On average, young carers are caring for at least 4 years before anyone offers them any help. Young carers often go under the radar for a lot longer than adult carers. One example of this is I was in a GP surgery doing an information stand, and a lady came and spoke to me and said she has these different health conditions, and that she recognised her husband was her carer, and she was like, he's amazing, he helps me with this, this, this. She took some information away to give to her husband, but she also had 3 young children with her. So I thought, were they her children? Are they young carers? So really gently broached the subject, and we had a chat about it. And she said, oh, they are my children, but they're not young carers, but they do. And then listed all the things they do to support her. They really clearly had a caring role, but because she'd got her husband as her carer, she hadn't thought about her children being young carers as well, and they were actually able to access support in their own right. Young carers don't need to be doing that practical support like we saw in the video. You know, providing emotional support or having somebody in their family that needs that extra help is going to have an impact in some capacity, and they are able to access some support. So just like adults, young carers are also entitled to a carer needs assessment, and they're entitled to this under Section 96 of the Children and Families Act 2014. It's designed to make sure that young carers aren't providing inappropriate and excess levels of care. That's the really important thing. There are some young carers that are caring for 50 hours a week, which is huge. You know, that's more than a full-time job. Let's take 50 hours of care a week plus their 30 hours of schooling and some sleep. That doesn't leave much room for anything else. And we would put that at excess levels of care. It's making sure that what they're doing is appropriate for their age and their setup. And it's to make sure that their caring isn't having an impact on their health, their well-being, educational development. And these carer needs assessment can make sure that young carer is getting all the support that they are entitled to. This can be requested by the young person, parent, guardian or professional. Again, and this is through local authority. It doesn't matter how old they are, who they care for, or how much care they provide. And that's something that I really want to touch on, how much care they provide. Lots of people will say to me, oh, Jill, I'm not entitled to any support because I only care for 5 hours a week. It isn't important how much care you're providing or what that looks like. It's important about how it's impacting your life. You can have 2 people, 2 different scenarios of caring responsibilities. One could be caring for 50 hours a week, but they might have everything in place that they need. They might be financially stable. They might live in an area that's got lots of support. They might have other family that can step in and give them a break. You then might have somebody who's caring for 5 hours a week, but also has young children, a really stressful job, is struggling financially, and those 5 hours of care might have a greater negative impact on their well-being than the 50 hours of care. So I think there's this myth out there that you have to be caring for like 30 hours a week, but I think that comes from the benefits. Actually, it doesn't matter how much care you're providing, it's about how it's impacting you as a carer. So what support is out there? So Carers Trust, so we're a partner of the National Carers Trust. So there is a version of Caring Together everywhere across the UK. So to find out where your local service would be, it would be popping your town or postcode into the search engine and it would bring up your local service. So that's the website there, so carers.org. That's one way to do that. And then another is through Carers UK as well. So carersuk.org, that's another way that you can search for support within your area. There's lots of information on both websites as well about sort of national information, but if you want to find something more local, there will be something in your area. And services will look quite different depending on where you are. It all comes down to like local service and the commission and the need in that area. But it could support with things like, these are just some examples, sort of emergency planning. It could be something to do with meeting other carers, so that peer-to-peer support. It could be having a break from your caring role. We offer counselling as well as part of our offer, but again, it will depend as to where you are. So I just want to finish with a couple of stats for you. This is what I find really interesting. If all carers were to down tools tomorrow and say, I'm not caring anymore, and we had to put a service in place of what they're currently doing, what carers are currently doing as unpaid carers, we would need to find £162 billion to put a service in place of what unpaid carers are currently doing at the moment. That's huge. To put that into context, the NHS budget for that time was only an extra 2 billion. The year before it was 2 billion below. So effectively, we would need to find the funds for another NHS service if carers weren't caring. It's so important that carers take the time for themselves and they're supported with their caring role. Thank you so much for your time today. I hope that information was useful. And again, it would be useful checking into local services to see what's available. And that's just some of the things that we do. But happy to take any questions in the Q&A a bit later if there's any opportunities. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that presentation, Jill. It was very informative. Now I'd like to bring Jason in with us. Are you there, Jason?
I am.
Good. Jason is husband of a stroke survivor. His wife had his stroke 24 years ago, so it was in different times. But Jason, you were left holding the baby, so to speak, who was only 4 months old at the time.
Yeah.
So I'll hand over to you to tell your story and how you found the caring side of things, or not, as the case may be.
Right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jason. I'm 59 now, and Janice had her stroke. My wife Janice had her stroke in 1999, and awkwardly, it was 5 days before Christmas. I think the first thing to say is the adjustment period from becoming a normal couple with a young baby to being a partner of a disabled person and a carer, and how long that took. But Janice had her stroke 5 days before Christmas, which in itself was awkward. And moving on from there, she was a midwife, and she'd actually gone into the hospital to re-sign a contract to go back to work, and actually had the stroke in the hospital. I was at work and they called me, so I went in to see her, and they said, oh, it's not that bad. But 5 days before Christmas, she was put onto a gurney and left outside. It was very busy at that time, and she was just not really seen. So I gathered my daughter up, Robin, and we went home, and we were worried, or I was worried. And then the day after, we went back into the hospital, and Janice's stroke had happened good and proper. I don't know how much experience you all have of people with a stroke, but she was properly disabled. And from that point there, I'm so happy that I had Robin, because it helped me focus my mind at the time, and to go from that normal, I was 34 when this happened, to go from a normal 34-year-old going to work from that. If I hadn't have had Robin, I think my grief would have taken up to that 3-year period, but I didn't have that time. My memories of that Christmas are quite, I don't know, stuck. And I don't really remember it very well. But the one thing I did do was, I can remember getting home from the hospital one day, and handing my daughter over to, and I can't remember who was there, friends or family or what have you, and literally breaking my heart. I've never talked to anybody who witnessed me at that time since, but I broke my heart, laid on the floor and cried, unbelievably. And I'm so happy I did it, because there'd been tears before, but I got the emotion out. And from that point on, I don't know whether it was Christmas Day or what, after that, it was very close to Janice's stroke. We managed to start rebuilding. Janice went into, it was an old folks home and in a hospital in Farnham, an old folks wing at a hospital in Farnham. And she slowly got better. And I went from I was actually working for the Met Office, and I used to work out in the Atlantic on weather buoys, and going from that to, I had 5 months off work, and so lucky to work for the Met Office, because they paid me my full salary at that time. And over that 5 months, I became much more used to the fact that my wife was disabled, I was a parent, and our lives was really going to have to change dramatically. Janice was properly disabled, which was bizarre. She couldn't move. A stroke affected her right-hand side. She was right-handed, or is right-handed. A stroke affected her right-hand side, and she couldn't move. She was stuck. So obviously me working on ships out in the Atlantic was going to have to stop. I was going to have to be a different person, and start moving on from there. I went back to work. I looked after Robin as much as I possibly could, but had to adjust to life as a carer. But I can remember I had to do a trip out to a weather buoy in the Bay of Biscay, and I remember I had a photograph of Robin, and a working ship. It was actually a French military ship, and I was in a bunk, and I had the photograph above me, and I thought, I cannot carry on doing this anymore. So back home, and slowly but surely, we had to adjust to, Janice was going to lose her salary. She was a community midwifery sister, so she was being paid good money, and we were going to lose that salary. We had a mortgage. I was trying to look after her. I was trying to look after Robin. I'm not panicking. I'm a logical person. And it was time to find a better paid job, and we were living in Surrey. We had to move away because we couldn't afford the mortgage, and from there, slowly but surely, we were still rebuilding. Janice had slowly found out that, first thing that came back was she could move her hand, her right hand. She got more and more movement back. The hospital she was in was fantastic, because it was, I don't know why she was there, but it was an old people's wing in a hospital, and she had 3 physiotherapists who used to practice on her, and all sorts of old new techniques, and they slowly but surely got her moving. She was in a wheelchair, and I used to wheel her around in it, but she was back home, slowly getting a bit better. I mean, cut to the chase, now she walks a bit. She can drive with a modified car. A right-hand side is still totally messed up, but we started building towards where we are now. I had to change jobs. We had to move house. We moved from Surrey to Northamptonshire, where we are now. And I can remember one night sitting there, before, when Janice was still in hospital, saying, right, I've got to double my salary. Fortunately, seeing how finances for people are today, I'm very lucky. I'm an engineer, and I found that not impossible to do. It took me a long time, but I managed to more than double my salary. And we built from there. As I'm hearing myself talking now, it's all very practical about how you're building the structure of your life around a disability. We managed to do it. And my memory of caring for Janice, we're still together, we're still happy. I must have cared for her more than I think I did. I know when she first had her stroke, within 24 hours of her having a stroke, she started a period. And I'm a man, I've never had anything to do with anything like that before, but she didn't want anybody else helping her. So I had to do that for her. There were nurses delivering meals for her and putting them on a tray in front of her and leaving them, and she couldn't reach them. And it was kind of things like that in hospital and slowly building from there. But like I said, we slowly got back to building a life. We got to where we are now, in this house where I am now. Janice, I actually found different strokes online, as you can see from behind Sheila, the Different Strokes charity, who are fantastic. And it never once occurred to me to mention Different Strokes to Janice at all. And I must have been looking at the Different Strokes website for about a year before I even mentioned it to her. And of course, she told me off for being a half-wit at that point. Said, "Why have you not told me about this?" And it's where she now, she does 2 days a week working at Different Strokes. So slowly, life's building. I've seen Janice go from, she had the last rites twice in hospital around Christmas in 1999. And I thought, oh, she's gone. I'm losing her. To building to where we were slowly getting better. And then one day, 2011, I had a stroke. Don't want to be left out. She's getting all the attention, and I had a stroke, which is devastating. It was horrible. I've never felt so guilty in my life. My stroke is not as bad as hers. We still talk about this, about what a stroke actually is and who's had the best stroke and who's had the worst stroke. But I lost about a year, probably the whole of 2011. I've got little or no recollection of at all. So I'm well aware that life can be rebuilt after stroke. We've discovered different strokes between us. And it's right, okay, we've rebuilt once, we can rebuild again. And I've been a carer to a certain extent. I then have to be cared for, and Janice has been cared for and is now a carer. So we're looking after each other, and both of us are having to be looked after as well, which is an odd circumstance, I guess. But from there, I don't know. We're both carers and we're both cared for. We are fortunate in our experience that we both understand the caring side, but possibly not what each of us have been through for the stroke. I still maintain Janice's was much worse than mine, because mine seems to be totally mental and hers was very much physical. But between the two of us, we're probably a whole person now. So we don't do too bad. In terms of caring in all of this, I'm talking about me and Janice. In the middle of all this is my daughter, Robin, who was 4 or 5 months old when Janice had her stroke, and would have been 11 when I had mine. And her attitude to Janice's stroke is very much, it's my mum. She's always been like that. We still, Janice and I still laugh about Robin walking around. I forget where we were, but Robin walking around very young. She walked at 11 months old with a disabled mum. Why did she walk at 11 months old? But when she was talking, she used to walk around saying, careful, 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 careful. Because Janice used to walk behind her going, careful, careful. And it's one of her first words. And watching her growing up with a disabled mum, she never knew any different at all. Her mum was just her mum. That's how her mum was. Again, you talk about guilt and things like that. I can't help feeling guilty about it. I've nothing to feel guilty for. I didn't mean to have a stroke, but poor Robin now is stuck with both her parents being stroke survivors. And what that means for her health and her future, she worries about. I worry about enormously. I don't think either of our strokes are particularly genetic or stuck in. I don't think she's destined to have a stroke. Janice's stroke, I think, was an accident. My stroke purely was stress. It's sad to say, but I was working too hard because I was working 60, 70 hours a week at the time. Still trying to look after Janice and not taking proper care of myself. But poor Robin is still stuck as a 24-year-old with two parents who both had strokes before they were 50. Janice was 34, I was 46. So in terms of care we offer, Janice and I are stuck in our own little world where we function as two people with some sort of disability. But the pair of us worry about Robin's attitude to her own life. And I think if I was saying anything to anybody, it'd be, you have to look after the families of stroke survivors more than anything else. I think that's my message.
Thank you, Jason, for sharing your story. Does that resonate with other stories you hear on a regular basis, Jill?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, Jason. And it's so important that carers are looked after, you know, that the people around the person who's had a stroke can recognise they have that caring role and are supported. Like we said, if we're not supporting carers as well, they will be the next patient.
Yeah.
And their health will decline. So it's so important that people recognise that really early on and can get that support in place before they find themselves in crisis and their health deteriorate.
I think it's a very hard thing for us Brits to admit that we may need help, but it's really important for everybody's sake, as you've both just demonstrated. We've had a couple of questions come in. If I can just put you on the spot, Jill. We've got one: can an adult carer get help at home if needed to go on holiday with our children?
Yeah, possibly. This will depend on where you live and what services are around in that area. So looking on the Carers Trust website, popping in your postcode, that will bring up your local carer support service. Give them a call and ask that question. They should be able to answer. So there might be things that can be put in place to be able to support you to go on holiday. There is likely to be paid care workers as well that will do that, but there will be a fee for that as well. But there might be something locally that is able to support, but that local support service, that carer support service, would be the best place to ask. I can tell you about what we do, but that's not going to be relevant to everybody. So yeah, contact your local support service.
Okay, thank you, Jill. And the next one is, what can carers do if they have to give up work due to their new caring responsibilities? Where can they turn to for help and support?
Yeah, again, it would be the local carers support service. It would depend on where you live. So there's something called carers allowance for, you know, financial support that could be accessed with the government. But there will be other things that might be able to, you know, to be put in place. Also, organisations are now having to recognise the carers in their workforce as well and offer more flexibility. There's something called the Carers Leave Act that's just come into place, and that's law as of April this year. And it's making sure that carers are having that carers leave, that leave that they need. So they're entitled to 5 non-paid leave days that can support with their employment. So what we're seeing is we're starting to see a shift in terms of employers being more supportive as well. So it might be that there are other opportunities that open up, but again, for when you're leaving work, it would be the local support service that would be able to put you in contact with the best support.
Okay, thank you, Jill, for answering those questions. Thank you to you both for coming on today. If you've got any questions that you think of after this webinar has ended, please email us at info@differentstrokes.co.uk and we will do our best to get an answer for you. And also use the resources that Jill's talked about. The recording of this webinar will be available shortly and we'll let all of you know when it's available so you can go back over that information, you know, at your leisure. Sometimes it's a lot to take in. And those videos were very moving, Jill. Thank you for making us all have a few tears today.
Apologies.
It's okay, don't apologize. It's reality, isn't it? And it's a reality that we don't want to think about, but it's out there. Our next webinar is on Friday the 9th of August, and we've got 2 stroke survivors talking about their experience when they had a PFO closure done. So please feel free to come along to that, and also, as always, there's opportunity to ask questions beforehand or come on the webinar and ask questions as we're going along. So once again, Jill and Jason, many thanks, and hopefully we'll see you all on the next webinar. Thank you.